Thank you.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Altmire.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. And when we confirmed your appearance here, I went back to my district and talked with some key small business owners and asked them what they would like for me to ask you, given the opportunity. And universally, businesses in my district are saying that lenders are focused primarily on real estate, and you addressed this in your testimony, real estate loans, rather than on providing the working capital that will enable small firms to rehire the people they've had to lay off and expand their operations and their employment, which has led lenders to state that there's no demand, and businesses are claiming there's no supply, the push and pull that you described earlier. So how can the Treasury ensure that businesses are getting the loans that they need in that climate?
Can't ensure. We can help, but we can't ensure. And you haven't given us the authority or the power to ensure, and I don't think you could. All we can do is through this mix of things. And it's a very substantial mix of programs we put in place. The SBA guarantees, the capital programs, the tax incentives, that we're doing as much as we can to help them to get their way out of this as quickly as possible, but we can't ensure. And countries facing these challenges over the decades have tried all sorts of different ways to get capital directly to companies who need businesses, and those programs are littered with failure and waste and distortion and politics. It's not a record you want us to emulate, and because of that, we're left with the tools we have, which is to try to work through banks, use the knowledge banks have about who's creditworthy, who isn't, not to make those judgments independently, but try to make it more economically attractive for them to lend.
Right. And for many lenders, when making a determination of creditworthiness, the discussion we were having earlier, they look at the past year or two. Obviously, that was not a good time in the economy, and it's difficult for any business to have shown a profit in that time period. And the Federal Reserve, has encouraged lending to creditworthy businesses to aid the recovery. But to date, the Fed has yet to define what creditworthy means. So the uncertainty further compounds the lenders' fears that regulators will penalize them for making loans that will later be found to have been made to non-creditworthy businesses. So what guidance can the Treasury offer, or have you offered, to help define what creditworthy means? And do Treasury's lending initiatives allow for a longer-term review beyond the 2 years for a business's finances?
We can't really make that judgment for the regulators or their banks. Not something we can do. But the programs we set up would still give the primary regulators the discretion to make a judgment about whether banks are looking at credit risk in a more balanced, reasonable way. And you're right to say that when you have a crisis like this, this was something that could have been a second Great Depression, and you saw a huge amount of business failure, a huge loss of wealth, huge trauma to the American economy. It's made everybody too tentative, a little too tentative, too cautious. And I think a real challenge we all face is to try to make sure people look forward and look at the earnings capacity of these businesses, recognizing that we'll be coming out of this over time, and you want to make sure they give as much weight to the future as they give to the recent past.
Right. And lastly, Mr. Secretary, in Western Pennsylvania, venture capital, something I hear a lot about, and access has been an issue recently. And it's proven to be a critical driver in producing the high-tech, high-growth jobs, and new businesses can create jobs that would fuel the economy in the way that we all hope to see. Do you think that more of a focus should have been put in retrospect on this type of equity investment rather than solely on debt financing?
It's a good question. I think you're right to say that one of the great strengths of the American financial system before the crisis was we were really better than any country in the world at helping small businesses get access to equity capital and debt capital early stage, and we got to make sure we're recreating that fundamental strength of our system. And you're right that angel investments and early stage equity investments are very important to innovative companies, and we're looking at a range of ways to help that. On the credit side, though, our judgment was we have to work really with the knowledge of community banks, not try to independently make judgments at which companies are creditworthy, which ones they aren't. But we think there's some other things we can do on the equity side, and we're working closely with the SEC and the SBA and others in that direction. We'd be happy to talk to your colleagues about how best to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today.